All right, hi everyone. We still have some people joining, so I'll keep letting people in as we go, but in the interest of time, I'll go ahead and get the session started. Um, so welcome everyone to the afternoon session on the first day of our medicine. We have today, welcome Melissa Van Bussel, who is a Senior Data Analyst at Statistics Canada, and will be giving a workshop today on R package development with GitHub Pages and pkgdown. So Melissa, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome, thanks. I'm just gonna switch my screens and then I'm gonna turn my camera off for the recording. So just give me 1 second to get my screen set up. Can someone confirm that you see my RStudio screen?
Yes, I see it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I will give people a chance to join the room, but I can pop some links in the chat in the meantime. So, oh, 1 second. So I'll pop the links in the chat. So the link to the slides will be here. And then also got the GitHub repo and the goal that we'll be working towards. It doesn't matter which IDE you use today. I'll be using RStudio, but if you want to use Positron or VS Code, that's all good as well. Sure, it's fine in chat. Okay. So before we get started today, I'll go over a couple of sort of housekeeping things about how today's workshop will work. I just shared the links in the chat, but there's also on the slides itself, all of the links that you'll need can be accessed from there. So you'll notice that on the footer of each slide, there's a link there that says ggnaut2.site. That will take you to the site that we're going to be working towards today. If you just add /slides.html onto the end of that, you'll be able to find the slide deck. The slides are also embedded on that link that's in the footer. And then you can get to the GitHub repo either by clicking on the GitHub icon that's in the nav bar on that site, or by using the direct link to GitHub. I think there might be someone with a unmuted mic. Oh, okay, I think everyone's muted now. So for today's session, please make sure you participate. It's a 3-hour workshop, which is a really long time to stay focused. So the more that you participate, the more fun it's going to be for everyone. There's going to be lots of opportunities where I'll ask people to put things into the chat. So please do participate and feel free to ask questions if you have them. I'll check the chat regularly to see if there's any questions. And based on what you say in the chat, I can also kind of readjust the pacing and the topics as we go in real time. The end goal for today's workshop is that hopefully, if you're following along live, by the end of the workshop, you'll have a package that's available on GitHub that others can install. You'll also have a pkgdown website for your package, which will be deployed via GitHub Pages. And then hopefully you'll walk away with an understanding of how to customize some of the trickier parts of a pkgdown website. Before we get started, does anybody have any questions on sort of the logistical side of things? Right. So the final product that we're going to be working towards today is the one that's available at this link here, ggnaut2.site. So I'm going to click on that and show what that looks like. So we're going to be building this up step by step. This is a package down site that is currently hosted on GitHub Pages. It has a custom domain, but it is available just on GitHub Pages. And we'll talk about how we can customize all the sorts of stuff that we see on here. And back to my slides. In terms of how you'll get the most out of this workshop, hopefully you have some prior experience with Git, but you don't need to have any prior experience with using package down or GitHub Pages. And ideally, you'll also have some basic understanding of how R packages work. So you don't have to be like a super expert R package developer, but hopefully if you've seen kind of the back end of an R package before, then you should be able to follow along with everything that we'll talk about today. But if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat whenever. For the stuff that we're going to talk about today, we're going to split things up into 3 parts. Part 1 is going to be the setup steps. So we're going to start by creating a basic package and then getting everything onto GitHub Pages. We'll take a short break after that. In part 2, we're going to make things look a lot nicer. We're going to add some styling and customize the content. We'll add a little bit of JavaScript as well. Then we'll take another break. And then for the last part, we're going to get really in depth with GitHub Actions and GitHub Pages and customize things at a much deeper level. And then depending how much time we have at the end, we'll talk about some more advanced stuff like adding custom domains to your GitHub pages or adding Cordo websites or other Cordo content inside your package down site. So we'll get started with some sort of pre-workshop setup steps. You might have seen the link to this on the page for the conference, but if not, don't worry. I'll kind of run through the setup steps now. So today I'm going to be working with the software that you see listed on this slide. If you don't have the exact same versions, things should probably work just fine. But if they don't work exactly as expected, try updating things and see if that works. So I'm going to be using R version 4.5, and I'm going to be using RStudio today. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is check whether or not GitHub is configured properly. So what we can do for that is we can run the git sitrep function in RStudio. Something I would suggest if you are trying to follow along live is if you have the slides open in one tab or in one window, and then your IDE open in the other tab or window, there's going to be lots of code that will copy and paste directly from the slides. So definitely a good idea to have the slides open so that you can copy and paste that stuff easily without having to type everything out manually. So I'm going to open up my RStudio and I'm going to type in git sitrep. And I'm just going to verify that my that RStudio knows where my GitHub account is. So what I should see here is my name and my email under the section that says Git global user. I should see that it says vaccinated true. And then I should see that it understands what my GitHub username is. If you don't see those things, there are steps in the slides to make sure that all of that returns properly. If you don't see your name and email, you can run the code from slide 17 to specify your name and email. You can run the git vaccinate function. And if you don't already have a personal access token set up for GitHub, then you can use the create GitHub token function from the use this package. And then you can use the git creds package to set up that personal access token. So if your username shows up in the name slot, that should be fine. Under the section that says Git global user, this doesn't matter too much. It might affect when you make commits on GitHub. It might show up as your whatever is written there. So if it just says your username, it might show your commits being attributed to your username instead of your full name, but everything should still work in terms of being able to push things. Okay. So we're going to start by creating a very, very basic R package. It's not really going to have anything super useful in it, but it's going to give us the stuff that we need in order to start creating the documentation website for a package. So first, we're going to make sure that the DevTools package is installed. And then we're going to create a new R project. So I'm going to go to File, New Project. Hopefully yours doesn't take as long as mine does to load. So I went to File, New Project, and then I'm going to select New Directory. And I'm going to scroll down towards the bottom, and I'm going to select the option that says R package using DevTools. And under directory name, I'm going to call this R Medicine. I personally already have a folder called this on my computer, so I'm going to call this one R Medicine 2025. But if you want to be able to copy and paste everything directly from the slides, you'll want to just name yours R Medicine. So because I'm creating a copy of a project that I already have, I'm just going to add that suffix on there, but you'll just want to put R Medicine. You can use the browse button to pick a folder on your computer where you want the project to go. I'm going to leave mine in this default folder here, and then I'm going to click on Create Project. This is going to give us a sort of template package, and it'll set some stuff up for us nicely. And once the template project has been created, we're going to go into the description file. And we're just going to make a couple of small changes. One thing that I'm going to change is on the version number. It's really long, so I'm just going to make it ever so slightly shorter. And then on line 4, I'm going to make sure that the information that's listed there is actually correct and corresponds to my information. So I've got my first name there, my last name, and then I'm also going to need to add in an email address if I want this to work properly. So on slide 22, you can copy paste what's there if you don't want to type it out manually. Replace it with your own name, of course. But notice here for mine, it didn't actually put my email address there by default. And it's not going to work if I don't have an email there. So I'm going to add that part in. Notice there's a second comma after my last name. So there should be your first name, last name, extra comma, then your email. So I'm going to put the extra comma and then type in my email address. And then we're also going to notice here on line 7, it's telling us that we want to use one of the following functions in order to pick a license for this package that we're creating. It doesn't really matter too much which one you pick for the sake of today. So you can run one of those functions and that will update what you see on line 7. So I'm going to run the use MIT license function. Just going to run that in the console. And now that has updated what I see on line 7. Does anyone have any questions about what we've done so far, or anyone who needs me to repeat any of those steps? And then for this next part, just a quick question. Feel free to answer in the chat. How much experience do you have with building R packages? So is that something that's brand new to you, or have you done some package development in the past, just so I can get a sense of how in depth I should cover the next part? Sounds good. So it seems like for most people, either no previous package experience or a little bit of experience, but not super, super in depth. So I'll make sure to go through the next part in details. Okay, so we're also going to create a README file. We're going to use the use README MD function from the use this package. And that's going to create a template README file. So I'm going to run that in the console. And that's just going to create a default README file, which will be the home page of our eventual package down site. And it's also going to be the home page that you see when you go to the project on GitHub. For now, we can just leave this as is. So if it's saying function not found, it's probably that the DevTools package isn't installed. So if you're getting that error, you'll want to try loading DevTools. And you might have to install DevTools first in order for that to load. So that would be what you would run in that case. And once you have DevTools loaded, you shouldn't have to put the use this in front of the functions. So we'll start by loading DevTools, which loads use this as well. So we're going to create our first R function, and the function is going to be really simple. It's not really going to do anything too fancy. It's just going to be a function that is going to print hello world. So this is going to end up going in the R folder. So I'll just pop out of my slides again and go back over here. So in the R folder, this is where all of the source code for our package is going to go. Right now, we don't have any functions in there. So if we want to create our first R function, we're going to use the use R function. And then inside the use R function, we're going to pass the name of the function that we want to create. So here I'm saying I want to create a function that's called print hello world. And when I run this, what it's going to do is it's going to automatically create the correct files for me. So if I run the use R function in the console, it just created the file for me under the R folder. And then it also opened that file up for me. So now that I've got this file created, I can go ahead and put the contents in there that I want for this function. So I'm going to copy and paste what I have from slide 24 into this file. And all this function is going to do is it's going to print hello world. It has an argument called x, but that argument doesn't actually do anything. I just put it there for the sake of kind of showing the syntax that you would do if you did have any arguments. And then all this stuff that we see up here on lines 1 through 13 is going to be what actually creates the documentation for our function. So I'm going to save this file. And then I'm also going to create a second function. It's going to be basically the exact same thing, except instead of printing hello world, it's going to print hello our medicine. So I'm going to, again, use the use R function. But this time I'm putting print hello our medicine for the name of the function that I want to create. And when I run this in the console, it's going to create another file under the R folder. So if I hit refresh, now I can see there's a second function that's there. And then I'm going to put pretty much the exact same content into this file, except now it's just going to say hello our medicine instead of hello world. So now our package has two functions. And as a best practice, whenever we create a new function, we're probably also going to want to create some tests. So we're going to be using the test that package to create some tests. So if you don't already have that package installed, you're going to want to install that package first. We're going to load the test that package. And then we're going to create a test file for each of the two functions that we've just created. So I'm going to copy what I have on slide 26, and I'm going to pop that into the console. The function to create a test is called useTest. And then very similarly to the useR function, we're going to put the name of the function that we want to create the test file for. So I'm going to hit enter to run that. And what that just did was it created a folder in my project called tests. And then inside that folder, it created a folder called test that. And then it created a file for me where I can actually put my tests for that function. And then it also opened that file for me. So this file right here that's called test-print hello world, this is where we're going to put our tests for the print hello world function. We can see the syntax that we're going to need to use in order to write that test. So to write a test, we're going to be using the test that function. Then you put a little description of what that test is actually going to be testing. And it should be something that finishes the sentence, test that blah, blah, blah. So in this case, the sentence is test that multiplication works. And then inside the function call is where you would put the actual test contents. So for this example test, it's expecting 2 times 2 to be equal to the value 4. And if this statement is true, that's going to mean that the test passes. So if I were to run this bit of code right here, it's going to tell me that the test passed because 2 times 2 is indeed equal to 4. I'm going to replace this default content with something a little more useful. I'm popping back to my slides, and on slide 26, I'm going to copy the code that's on the right-hand side of the page, and I'm going to paste that into the file. So here I'm saying I want to test that my print hello world function actually really does indeed print hello world. So when I call that function, the results that it should return should be hello world. And if that's the case, then this test is going to pass. So if I highlight those lines of code and I run them, okay, yeah, so it's because I haven't actually installed this package yet, so it doesn't know where that function is. So what we're gonna do first is we're gonna run the function called check. Oops. So I'm gonna run check, and what this is gonna do is it's going to actually define the functions that I've created and create the documentation. So usually this will take about 30 seconds or so. And in theory, if I have any tests, it will also run those tests and make sure that everything passes. And what we want to see at the bottom, hopefully we see everything in green. So we should see ideally 0 errors, 0 warnings, and 0 notes. That tells us that everything is good to go. And I believe now if I run this, it should, yeah, okay. So after I run the check function, I should be able to run the individual tests from my package. And now it's confirming that this test is passing. We're also going to add a similar test for the other function that we created. So once again, we're going to use the used test function. And this time I'm going to create a test file for the other function that I made. So that was a function called print hello R medicine. And if I run this line of code, it's going to create the test file for that other function. Now in my tests folder, I can see over here, it has added an additional file. And we're ready to paste in the test contents for this function. So now from slide 27, I'm going to copy and paste the test content that's on the right-hand side of the slide. And now it's basically the exact same test. All I did was change that it should say hello R medicine instead of hello world. So if I run this test, it should pass as well. And then before I move on, can I just get can I get like in the chat, let me know if this all worked for you, or is there anyone who they weren't able to get this part to work, and I can try to help out if anyone's having any issues. Perfect. Awesome. Okay. So now that we've got a very, very basic package, we're going to get things uploaded onto GitHub. And but before we push to GitHub, we want to make sure that we've run the check function and that we see no errors, warnings, or notes. So technically, we did just add another test in here. So best practice would be to run the check function again. Just make sure that the new test that we added passes as well. In this case, we know it's going to pass because we already ran it, but it's still good to get in the habit of always running the check function before we push anything to GitHub. Should take a few more seconds. All right, so now that I've confirmed that everything is passing, this tells me that it's okay for me to go ahead and upload this stuff onto GitHub. So there's a few functions that we're going to need to run to push this onto GitHub. The first one is the use Git function. And what this is going to do is it's going to initialize this project as a Git repository, and it's going to create the gitignore file and put some contents in there that'll be helpful for this type of project. So I'm running the use Git function. It's going to ask you whether or not you want to go ahead and commit the files. And you'll have to select whichever number corresponds to yes. So in my case, I'm going to type 2 into the console and then hit enter. It's also going to ask me if I am okay to go ahead and restart RStudio right now. I'm going to select 3, which corresponds to yes for me. And it's going to just refresh RStudio. I see there's a question in the chat. Sorry. So then, okay, so in the chat, there's a question about undocumented code objects. Okay, so I think by default, running check should update the documentation. But if it's not working, what you could do is try running just the document function on its own. And then hopefully that should fix that issue, but if not, let me know. So now that I've restarted my RStudio, I should see in my Git pane on the top right panel of RStudio. It should now recognize that this is a Git project. So hopefully that Git panel should be visible. We should see that we're on the main branch. And then if we want to push all of this to GitHub, the use this package is going to make this very easy for us. There's a function called use GitHub, which is going to push everything for us without us ever having to leave RStudio. So I'm going to run the use GitHub function. Oops. Okay. So it's going to ask you to confirm the details. So it's telling me that it's going to go ahead and create a GitHub repository under my username, and then the project itself is going to be called the same thing as what my package is named. And then in my case, I had made some changes, I guess, to a file that hadn't been committed yet. So I'm going to have to confirm that I do want to commit that change as well. So I'm going to type 1 to confirm that. And now it's going to push that to GitHub and open that page for me automatically. So now what I should see is all of the files that I saw in RStudio, minus any of the files that were in my gitignore. And I should also see the default contents that were in that README. Okay, so can I get another, maybe like a thumbs up in the chat if you're now able to see your repo on GitHub? Okay, Git default branch. Okay, so for the question in the chat about the error. If you run git sitrep, do you see the same stuff that I see? There should be a section here that says default branch main. So if you're getting an error about the default branch, it's probably because something isn't showing up properly on the git sitrep. I can put the link in the chat to the steps to fix that. So just give me 1 second to share that link. So we'll take a break in a second, and if there's, well, in a few minutes, and then if there's anyone who wasn't able to push it to GitHub, during the break, I can try to help troubleshoot. But I'll keep going for right now, and then in about a couple of minutes, we'll take a break. So once you see your repo on GitHub, the next step that we're going to do is we're going to create the pkgdown website using GitHub Pages. And thankfully, once again, the use this package is going to make this really easy for us. We can just run this function here called use pkgdown GitHub Pages. So if I run that function, it's going to create a few files for me. And then it's going to push the changes to GitHub and set everything up for me automatically. So now, if I go back to my GitHub repo, hopefully I should see, oh, I don't know if it actually pushed that or not. 1 sec. So now hopefully I should see that a new branch was created called GitHub Pages. And it's going to take a few minutes before that site is actually visible. But we should see over on the right-hand side on GitHub, there should be a link that has a .github.io in it. And that's going to be the URL where the pkgdown site is going to be hosted. So if I click on this link, it may or may not be done. So it might not, yeah, okay. So usually it'll take about 5 minutes or so for that to get set up. So this is a perfect time for a break. So why don't we come back at 3:15, but in the meantime, if there's anyone who was having any trouble getting things onto GitHub, I'll stick around during the break and I can help anyone out. So I'll just put in the chat. Is there anyone who wasn't able to get everything pushed onto GitHub? Can also feel free to unmute yourself if you want, if it's easier.
Hi, yeah, I'm actually still having issues when I run check.
Okay.
And there's one error. I don't know if I can. It's a long error, so it's
Okay.
error in, actually, I guess I could put it in the chat.
So what that's most likely saying is, so we're going to want to go into that test file that it's referring to. So the test-print hello world file. So if I go into tests and then test that, and then print hello, hello world. It's telling us that there's an error on the first line of the test, and it's saying that there's code that's being run outside of test that. So usually when that error pops up, what it means is that there's some sort of code in the file that isn't contained inside of the test that function. So there might be some sort of like, if there's like a code at the top that's outside of that function call, then you'll often get an error like that. Is there any code outside of the test that function?
There's not. I'm trying to make sure. My institution blocked that, like the domain name with the slides.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I didn't like type it out wrong and just like miss a comma.
Yeah, you know what I can do? I can change the, I'm pretty sure I can just change it so it's not, oops, I keep pressing spacebar. I can change it so that it's not hosted there, because I imagine there's probably a few people, if they're on their work computer, that probably can't access that link. So 1 second. Yeah, but now that might take a few minutes for that to work. Actually, I think it's just doing a redirect now, that's why. Okay, so I removed that custom domain. Hopefully this link should work now. You might have to open it in like a new, like an incognito window, or clear your cache for it to work. But can you let me know if the slides work from there?
They do. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It looks like actually like before that error, there's also this one. Sorry, I don't want to take up all the time if other people have. But I don't.
Proxy. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like it sounds like there's an object being called somewhere in your code called compare proxy that isn't defined. What you could do is, if you do Control-Shift-F and then you type for compare proxy, you might be able to find like if there's a file that has something called that.
Okay, I'll keep digging. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. And I'll just take a look in the chat. Okay, it looks like there's some people helping each other out in the chat. Thank you for helping troubleshoot. So for,
Yeah, sorry,
yeah.
sorry, Melissa.
Go ahead.
I have a problem when I use pkgdown GitHub Pages.
Okay.
I don't get why. Okay, there is a read more. Create a tree. I don't know if you can see. I'm sorry, I have my photo, but I don't have my name. I don't know why
Oh,
Zoom.
that's okay.
It seems like the function is not creating the branch.
Okay, like the GH Pages branch.
Yeah,
Okay. I'm not sure. So the other thing too, like if anyone's having trouble getting it up onto GitHub, I'll stick around after the workshop today and I can try to help troubleshoot. But what I would suggest in order to like still be able to follow along during the workshop is if you just run the build site function,
yeah,
you
it
should
is
be able
working.
to see
Yeah.
your changes locally.
Nice. Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. Just in case there was anyone who didn't hear during the break, I changed the link to the slides because it was blocked for some people on their work devices. So the link that you'll want to use to access it is the one that has the github.io in it. So I'll just put that into the chat. And you might have to open it in an incognito window. Okay, so we'll keep going, but if you're having trouble getting things onto GitHub, you can just build the changes locally for now, and then after the workshop, you can stick around if you want, and I can help you try to get it onto GitHub. But most of the stuff that will be changing, you'll be able to preview it from the local changes anyways. So don't worry too much. If you get stuck on the GitHub part, you'll still be able to get lots out of today's workshop. So whenever you want to preview the changes locally, you can run the build site function, and that will show you what your package down site currently looks like. So right now, this is what I have so far. So it's not super exciting right now, but it is a basic site. And I should see from the reference page, I should see the 2 functions that I created. And if I click on one of the functions, I should see the documentation that's associated with that function. So now we've kind of got a very basic site. And what we're going to do from here is we're going to make things look a lot nicer. Okay, so we're going to create a package logo. Feel free to use any image that you want. If you don't want to like make a logo right now, you can feel free to use the logo that I've got here in the slides. So you can right click on the logo, save the image to your computer, and then use that image. Or if you want, you can go to the link here that says Hexmake, and you could create an image. And then once you've got an image that you want to use as the logo for your package, you can use the use logo function. So the syntax that you'll want to put is use logo, and then you'll put the full, or you'll put the file path to the logo image. So in my case, I'm going to run use logo. And for me, my logo image is located, oops. It's located in a folder on my computer. And that is where my logo image is located. So enter whatever file path corresponds to wherever you downloaded the image to. And then once I run that, it's going to automatically put the logo into the correct location for me. So it created a folder called figures, and then it put my logo image in there and it resized it to the appropriate size. And then what it also did is it added the logo to my README file. So I think it should have added it, but okay, sorry, it doesn't add this automatically, but it gives you the code here that you can add to your README if you want the package logo to show up on your GitHub repo. So if I copy paste what's shown in the console here, I can put that into my README file. And then the next time that I push those changes to GitHub, I should see that the logo is part of the README. We can also create, and I'm not actually sure how to pronounce this word properly, but favicons or favicons. So that's the little image that you see in your browser window when there's like a little picture beside the browser tab. So if you want it to show up as having your logo instead of, for example, right now it just has this blank globe icon. If I want it to instead have my package logo, I can run the build favicons function, which is from the pkgdown package. As a heads up, if you're on a work device right now and your work device blocks internet access from like certain websites, this may or may not work for you. It works on mine, so I'm using my personal laptop, but I know on my work computer, this function doesn't work. So just as a heads up, if that's the case, you can create those files and then drag them in afterwards, or you can grab them from my GitHub if you want and download them and put them in. So now that I've made all of those changes, I'm going to run the build site function again to make sure that those changes have been applied. So ideally, when the build site finishes running, now I should see my logo over here on the right. And then I should also see the favicon in the browser window. So before it was just like a blank image, and now it has my package logo. Can I get a thumbs up in the chat if you're still following along and able to get the logo working? Awesome. I'm just going to mute myself for a second and have a sip of water. Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna, now that I know that it's working locally, I'm gonna go ahead and push these changes to GitHub so that I see those changes reflected online as well. So I'm going to stage all of these changes. And I'm gonna add a commit message. And then push those changes. And let me just Go back to GitHub now. Okay, so now what I should see on GitHub is I should see that my package logo is now part of my README. And I should see that there's a GitHub workflow that's currently running. So it's kind of like magic. Whenever we push any changes to the main branch, those changes are also going to be applied to our package down site that's now being hosted on GitHub Pages. So we don't have to do anything to make those changes apply other than just pushing those changes to the main branch and then waiting about 5 minutes or so for those changes to be applied. So right now, if I refresh this, yeah, that's still running. So that'll take a few minutes. But once that's done running, we'll take a look at our site and make sure that those changes were applied there as well. So 404 error. I'm not sure. Can you give a little bit more information about what page exactly is giving the 404? Is it like from the slides?
It's when I click on the our medicine GitHub site link that we generated just now through
Oh, okay. Like if you click on like in the sidebar here, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Oh yeah, so I'm still getting that as well. So it does usually take a few minutes.
So it's all
So
right
it-
that it's showing it right now?
Yeah, it should be all right that it's not there yet. We basically need to wait until we see all green check marks in here.
Okay.
Yeah, so like if you click on actions, you should be able to see the status. And usually it does take about 5 minutes or so. You can follow along with it in real time and kind of see like how far along is it. But the reason why it takes so long is because it has to basically like it spins up a virtual machine, it installs R, it installs Cordo, it installs whatever package dependencies you have, and then it has to like run the build site function. So it takes a few minutes for all of that to happen. But then once these are all green check marks, that's when we should be able to access this. But it's not done running yet, so we won't see it there until it's done running. So while we're waiting for that to finish loading, we can talk a little bit more about some other things that we can do to improve the style a bit. So the easiest thing that you can do that'll make the biggest difference on the overall theming of the website is to add a boot swatch theme. So we're going to go into the file that's called _pkgdown dot oops, that should say .yml. So the _pkgdown.yml file. Right now, it shouldn't really have very much in it. Should just have the URL to your site. And then it should say template and then bootstrap. But what we're going to do is we're going to add lines 4 and 5 that we see on here. So we're going to add a line that says bslib, and then a line that says bootswatch. And we're going to pick a theme. So if you click on the link that's on slide 40, we'll be able to see the different themes that are available kind of as our starting point. As a heads up, there's, I believe, just this one on the page called Bright, which won't work. This one is fairly new, so it's not been implemented yet. But the other ones on here, I believe they should all work. The one that I'm going to be using is, I think, Zephyr. So you can pick whichever one you like the look of the most. aside from bright, which won't work. And then in my underscore pkgdown.yml file, I'm going to type bslib on line 4 with a colon, enter, tab, and then for boot swatch, I'm going to put the name of the theme that I want to go with, which is Zephyr for my case. I'm just going to switch back to GitHub and see if that finished loading now. All right, so now I've got all check marks, and I've got a green check mark on the left there. So hopefully that should mean that if I now click the link on the right-hand side of my GitHub repo, hopefully that site should now show up. And is there anyone who, like, their pipeline finished running and they got the green check mark, but they don't see their website when they click that link on the GitHub repo? Right, so now anytime that we make changes to our repository, those changes are going to be automatically applied at that site here. Remember, it does take a few minutes, so probably you don't want to, like over the course of today's workshop, we're probably not going to push everything every single time we make a change, but we'll push every time we have like a sort of major checkpoint where we want to confirm that everything is working as we expect it to. So now I've added a boot swatch theme. If I run the build site function again, hopefully I should see those changes applied, and there should be some basic styling that gets applied when I choose that boot swatch theme. So now I've got a blue nav bar. I think probably the fonts are still the same, but depending on which theme you pick, it could look a lot different than what you see here. But we can see that there has been some basic styling that's been added now. And you can also customize the appearance using a bunch of bslib variables. There's a page that's linked on slide 41 that's going to show you a full list of options that you can change. It's super, super long, 932 different variables that you can change. Personally, I tend to not use these. I tend to use a different approach, which I'll show in a couple minutes. But if you're someone who's already really comfortable with bslib, then just know that you can use any of these to change bslib variables. One thing that we can do that's a fairly easy change to make is that we can change the primary color of the theme. So for example, here on line 6, if I add this hex code, that'll change sort of like the default color. So instead of it being that blue, it's going to switch to whatever color I select as the primary color there. So I have so many tabs open. Oops. Okay, so C7. Oh, I don't know where I think my RStudio just closed. Sorry. And I'll just check what's in the chat while I'm waiting for RStudio to launch back up. Okay. So for the question in the chat about the pages build and deployment. Okay. Yeah, so if you only see one action on here, if it's just like this first one, then the site isn't going to be published yet. So you'll want to make some changes in RStudio, really any change, and then commit and push those changes. And that will hopefully change the number of workflow runs that you see on the actions page. So we need to see at least one green check mark with one that says pages build and deployment in order for the site to actually be deployed onto GitHub Pages. Okay, so now my RStudio is open back up. So I'm gonna put in that color. You can pick any color you like. I think mine, I picked like a sort of pinky or red kind of color. We can also change the font using BSLib variables. There's a lot of different ways that you can change the font, but I think for most people, the easiest way is probably to use Google Fonts. So, oh yeah, okay, so it popped open. This was the color that I picked as my primary color, so that's now been changed. But for Google Fonts, you can select the base font, for example. There's a different BSLib variable for the code font if you want to have like a monospaced font. And then there's the link there for Google Fonts if you want to be able to, oh, yeah, okay. I did not update that link, so that link does not work. But if you Google for Google Fonts, you should be able to find the interface that'll allow you to see all the different fonts that are available. I'm going to copy and paste in these fonts and add them here. And I'm going to rebuild the site. So those are 3 BSLib variables that are fairly easy to use, that are going to really, really impact the overall, or sorry, that's 4 BSLib variables that will really, really change the overall styling of your site. So with just those few lines of code, you can make things look quite a lot different. So that's a fairly like low-hanging fruit if you want to do just a tiny bit of styling, but you don't want to get super deep in the weeds with it. So now I've got a different font here and a different code font. Okay. So if you want to customize things even further, if you are not someone who's super comfortable with BSLib variables, then you might want to just add some custom CSS. You can create a file called extra.css or extra.scss in the pkgdown folder. And if you put the file in that location and you give it that exact file name, it's going to be automatically copied to the correct location when you push things to GitHub, and that styling will be applied automatically. So for my case, I'm going to create an extra.scss file, and then I'm going to paste in this default content here into that file. So in the pkgdown folder for my project, I'm going to create a file called extra.scss. And I'm just going to paste in that default content for right now. That's going to make it into a valid SCSS file. If we just put nothing in there, it wouldn't understand how to compile things properly. So we're just kind of putting some placeholder content in there for right now. Okay, so typically the strategy that I use when I want to change something on my website, but I don't know how to change it, is I will and run build site again so that I can actually have the site open. So I am definitely not a BSlib expert, so I don't usually know what the names of all the different variables are. So the approach that I usually find a little bit easier if I'm trying to change the styling of something on one of my sites is I will just find the thing that I want to change and then I'll right click on it. So for this example, I'm going to change the color for the search bar. So I'm going to right click on the search bar. And then depending on the exact browser that you're using, the option might be called something different. But in Google Chrome, if you right click and then click on inspect, it should tell you the class of the object that you right clicked on. So here I can see that the class is called form control. Sometimes you have to play around a little bit with exactly where you click in order to get the exact right class. But the one that I'm interested in is going to be called form control. And then if I want to change the color that's associated with that class, now I know the name of that class, and so I can easily apply that, that CSS. So for the form control class, I'm going to change the background color to the color that's on slide 44. And in my extra.scss file, I'm going to paste that into the bottom. And that should change the color of my search bar. So now if I rerun build site, it's going to change the background color of my search bar into this sort of pinkish color here. Right now that looks terrible, of course. I'm not saying that this looks good, but that's the syntax for how you can change that. But really this approach in general, I highly recommend. If ever there's something that you're not sure how to change the property or how to change the styling for, if you right click on it and then click on inspect, you should be able to find the class that's associated with it. Okay, so next we're going to add a dark mode to our site. And thankfully this is really easy. We just need to change a single line of code. And in our file that's called _pkgdown.yml, we're just going to add a line that says light switch true. So in my _pkgdown.yml file, I'm going to say light switch is equal to true. And once I've set that to true, what it's going to do if I rebuild the site is it's going to add a button in my nav bar that's going to allow users to switch between light mode and dark mode. As soon as you enable the light mode and the dark mode, you're probably going to want to change your CSS to make sure that things make sense for both the light mode and the dark mode. So this is what my site currently looks like. And now if I use this little gear icon over here, I can switch between light and dark. The search bar color looks fine right now for the light mode, but if I switch to the dark mode, it really doesn't make sense there. So what I want to do is I want to be able to modify my CSS conditional based on whether the user is currently looking at the website in the light mode or in the dark mode. So to do that, if you put the following syntax in front of any of your CSS classes, you can specify what you want the styling to look like for light and dark mode respectively. So the syntax is like this. I'm choosing two different colors based on which mode the user is currently using. So I'm going to copy what I've got on slide 46. And I'm going to put that into my extra.scss file. So now instead of it just having one entry for the form control class, there's going to be 2 entries. And in general, if you are using a light mode and a dark mode, you probably are going to want to have a different styling choice for dark mode versus light mode. So I'm going to rebuild this again. And hopefully now these colors will look a little bit nicer. While I'm waiting for that to build, does anybody have any questions about anything that we've talked about so far today? Feel free to, if you have questions at any point, you can put them in the chat, or feel free to raise your hand if you want to unmute yourself. All good. So now we've got a different color for the search bar for our dark mode and our light mode, and things look a little nicer. Okay, the next thing that we can do to make things look a bit better is we can add a syntax highlighting theme. So what that's going to do is it's going to change the styling that we see for anywhere that there's code. So it's basically what should be the styling options for any kind of code block on our package down site. So either on the home page or in the function documentation, if we change the syntax highlighting theme, it's going to change how this type of text looks. You can set a different syntax highlighting theme for light mode and for dark mode. And I ran out of time to do this, but what I had originally wanted to do was like make a picture showing all of the different themes. But there should be on either on the package down website or on the Cordo documentation, it should tell you what all of the different themes are. I believe it's actually pulling the themes from Cordo. So any of those highlighting themes, I believe, should work with package down. But for today's example, I'm going to use Atom 1 light and Atom 1 dark for my light mode and dark mode, respectively. So now I'm going to add that into my underscore pkgdown.yml file. And I'm going to build the site again. So the difference might not be super noticeable, but before this was kind of more a bit more muted colors, and now it's a bit more vibrant. And if I switch to the dark mode, this theme looks pretty okay for light versus dark. And now we've made quite a bit of changes. So I'm going to go ahead and push these changes to GitHub. Now that we've kind of changed the basic stuff for the styling. Staging both files, committing, and then pushing the changes to GitHub. And while I'm waiting for those changes to take place on GitHub, something that I'm wondering about is how much experience everyone here has with package down. Is this like, is today your first time creating a package down site, or have you created like basic package down sites before? feel free to put your answer in the chat, just so I can know how much detail to go in. So for most people, this is their first time working with pkgdown. Okay, so given that for a lot of people, today is the first time that they're working with pkgdown, I'm going to make sure to go into a lot of detail about the next section. We're going to talk about customizing the actual content. So far, we've looked at how to change the styling, but now we're going to talk about the actual different pages that are on our pkgdown site. So right now, if I go to what's actually, okay, yeah, that's not going to work for me because of the whole fact that I changed the domain. So the pipeline or the GitHub Actions is still running right now. So what I see on GitHub is not as up to date as what we see locally. But we're going to talk about kind of the different components of a pkgdown site and some of the content that we can actually change. So we can change the stuff that's in the nav bar. By default, we don't really have that much in the nav bar. We've got a search bar, we've got the title of our package, the version number, and then we have a page here called reference. And the reference page is the page that shows all of the different functions that are part of your package. We've also got a footer at the bottom of the page, which by default is going to show the authors, and it's going to have a little kind of like promotional thing in the bottom right saying that the site was built with pkgdown. And then we're also going to see there's a sidebar on the right-hand side, and by default, it's going to have the GitHub links, the information about the license for the project, how to cite the project, and then the list of any contributors on the project. All of that stuff, though, we can change. And we can add things, we can remove things, and we can completely customize what's seen there. So the first thing that we'll talk about how we can change is the reference page. So that's the page that lists all of the functions that are part of your package. And if you've got data sets that are part of the package, those are also going to be listed there as well. But by default, it's going to list the functions in alphabetical order. So right now, we've only got these two functions, print hello R-Medicine and print hello world. And we can see that they're currently in alphabetical order. But other than that, there's really no organization of those functions. But if we look at other pkgdown websites, we can see that it's possible to organize things a whole bunch. So this is the documentation for the pkgdown package itself. And we can see that for this package, the reference page is a lot more organized. There are headings and then there's subheadings. If I scroll down, you can see the other headings that they have. And then within each subheading, there are a bunch of function names that may or may not be in alphabetical order. So here, these ones aren't in alphabetical order. So really, we can put those functions in any order that we want, and we can create groupings or subgroupings. So to do that, we can use the underscore pkgdown.yml file. And the way that we're going to do it is we're going to create sections using the keyword title. So we're going to have a portion of our file called reference. We can use titles to create high-level titles. We can use desk to create descriptions for those high-level headings. And then we can use the contents keyword to specify the functions in the order that we want them to be in. So if we want to change it away from that default alphabetical order, we can just type in the function names one by one. So I'm going to copy what I've got on slide 50. And then I'm going to put that into the bottom of my pkgdown.yml file. I'm going to run the build site function again to show what that now looks like. Okay. So now it's a little more customized. I didn't write anything super useful, but I put a heading here that says functions that print things. And then my description is, these are functions that are all going to print things to your console. I changed the order that the functions were listed in. So it's no longer in alphabetical order. And this is fine because I've only got 2 functions at the moment. So typing it out manually wasn't too hard. But as you start to have more and more functions in your package, you're probably not going to want to have to type them out all one by one. So if you want a shortcut, you can use something called topic matching. And that works really similar to what you're probably used to if you're a tidyverse user. So you can use, for example, the starts with function, and then you don't have to type out the entire list of functions one by one. So this is really, really handy if you've got functions that have similar names to each other that can kind of be grouped together in a logical way. So in my case, I've got these 2 functions that are for printing things, and they both start with the word print underscore. So instead of having to type out the name of each individual function, what I could do is I could just say starts with and then print underscore. This is going to produce basically the exact same thing. The only difference is that it's now going to put those functions in alphabetical order. So if you want to be able to control the exact order, you won't want to use the topic matching. But if you just want to kind of group things together based on the names, then that shortcut is really, really helpful. And there's a link on slide 51 that'll show you all of the different topic matching shortcuts that you can use. So there's starts with, ends with, you can do regular expression matching, and so on. You can also do things like based on the life cycle of the function. But something that I find really fun is you can also do things like add emojis. And as we saw on the pkgdown website, you can also create subsections. So I'm going to copy paste this from slide 52 into my underscore pkgdown.yml file. And now I've got titles, but I've also got some subtitles, and I've added emojis. So those are going to be easier to see once I run build site again. But the syntax for adding the emojis is sort of similar to what you can do on GitHub. So if you've ever put like emojis in your GitHub comments, that syntax should look familiar. And now if I go to my reference page, this is the pencil emoji, this is the emoji called 1, and this is the emoji called 2. I just find that fun. Now for this example, of course, we've only got 2 functions in this package, so it's not super exciting. But if you've got a package that has like 20 plus functions, then being able to control the order that your functions show up on your reference page is going to make it a lot easier for users to figure out how to actually use your package. Right, I'm going to flip back to GitHub and just check if everything finished there. So sometimes you might have to hit Control-Shift-R, do like a hard refresh on your site when you're looking at it on GitHub, just to make sure that you actually see the most up-to-date version. But now I can see that the styling that I added has been applied. I've got the light mode and the dark mode now on GitHub. I haven't pushed my changes to that reference page yet, though, so those changes haven't been applied, but everything else should now be there. So we'll take a quick break. Let's take a 5-minute break this time. So we'll come back at 4:07. And if you have any questions or if you got stuck anywhere along the way, please let me know and I can help troubleshoot. The next thing that we're going to talk about is customizing our nav bar. There's a question in the chat about the recording. Emily, are you able to answer that one? I'm not sure if does the recording get shared afterwards with participants?
Hi, yeah, the recording will be shared. So these all go up onto YouTube, onto our YouTube channel, like a few weeks after the conference, once we've done some light editing and everything.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. The other thing that I'll mention too is if you get stuck anywhere along the way and you want to see like what the repo is supposed to currently look like, you can check whatever I've currently got in this repository. So I'll paste that link in the chat as well. But yeah, feel free to like kind of compare your project to the one that I've got on GitHub, and hopefully that should help as well. Was there anyone who got stuck anywhere along the way? All right, so I'll get started back up again. Next, we're going to look at how we can customize the contents of our nav bar, the top of our website. So the way that we can do that is, again, using the _pkgdown.yml file. We're going to have a section in that file for the nav bar. And then there's some built-in options. For example, we can have the search bar, we can have a link to our GitHub repo, and we can have a light switch for users to switch between the light mode and the dark mode. If you want to change the order of any of the built-in options, then you can use right and left to specify where you want things to go. So in my case, I want to have my search bar on the right. I want to have my little icon for clicking to the GitHub repo beside that. And then I want to have my light switch button on the right of that. So I think that's actually what we already kind of have by default. But in theory, if I wanted, I could switch up the order of those. If I wanted GitHub to go over here, I could just change the order that I write those in. Or if I wanted, I could, instead of putting them on the right, I could put any of those elements on the left part of the nav bar. So I'm going to copy this into my _pkgdown.yml file. I'm going to add like a new section for it, kind of at the bottom here. And this is the syntax that we use. This is going to set it up so that it looks the same as it already currently does. But for example, if I wanted it to have, I wanted to put the search bar on the left, that's how I could kind of change that. I'm going to leave it as the default, but you can play around with the left and the right based on how you want things to look. So those are the kind of built-in ones, but you can also create custom things in your nav bar using something called components. So you can create custom buttons or other kind of, well, components is what they're called. And you can also add icons for what those buttons actually look like. So in my case, what I want to do is in between my GitHub button and my light switch button, I want to add a button that's going to take users to my LinkedIn profile. So because the My LinkedIn component is not one of the ones that's built in the package down, I'm going to have to define what's actually going to go in that component. So the syntax that I use is I'm going to use the word components. And then for each custom component, I need to create a section for that. And then I'm going to need to specify what I actually want to go there as part of that component. So I can specify the link that I want to be taken to if a user clicks on that button. I can add like a label for like accessibility reasons. I can also add an icon for the button using Font Awesome icons. So if I open the Font Awesome website, typically I will filter it to free, and then I will search for the icon that I want. In this case, the one that I want to use is called LinkedIn. And so the syntax that I use is I use the letters FA dash, and then I put the name of the icon from the Font Awesome website. So now I'm going to copy that into my _pkgdown.yml file. I'm going to replace what I had before, and then I'm going to run the build site function so that we can see what that actually looks like. Okay, so now I've got four components on the right-hand side of my nav bar. So I've got the search, I've got the GitHub. This is my custom component called My LinkedIn. And then there's the light switch component. If I hover over the My LinkedIn component, you can see that the link it's going to take me to is the URL that I specified in my file, which is the link to my LinkedIn profile. Now, the nice thing is that once you kind of get the hang of the syntax for the nav bar, it's kind of the same syntax for everything else in pkgdown as well. So you can also customize the footer contents using pretty much the exact same syntax. So you're going to put like the name of the overall thing that you want to change. So before it was nav bar, this time it's going to be footer. Then you can specify what you want to have on the left and the right, just like we saw before. And then you can create custom components as well. So in this case, I created 2 custom components. Neither one of these is built into pkgdown. On my left-hand side of my footer, I'm going to have a component called developed by. And then in my definition for that component, it accepts Markdown. So I can really put kind of anything I want there. And so here I'm going to have it say developed by Melissa Van Bussel. I'm going to have like a little link to my website. I've got a little emoji here for a laptop. And then I said the link to the R-Medicine conference website. And then for my other component, it's going to be called Built with pkgdown. And instead of it just saying the default, so right now it says, if we go here, let me look at the footer. Right now it says site built with pkgdown, and it just has like a link to the pkgdown documentation. But let's say I want to customize that a little bit more. And what I've done here is I've actually added an image. So it says this site was built using pkgdown. I put some non-breaking space characters, and then because it's Markdown, I can embed images in there. And I put a link to the logo for pkgdown. So now I'm going to copy what I've got on slide 55. I'm going to paste that into my _pkgdown.yml file. And now I'm going to rerun the build site function. So remember, this is what it currently looks like. This was the default. But once the build site function is done running, now it's a lot more customized. So now I've added a link to my website. I've got my little emoji, got the link to the R-Medicine page. And then I've got the image that I added in here, which I just embedded using an HTML image tag. I just want to do another sort of status check. Is everyone still following along for the most part? I know there's some people that are having a bit of challenges with the GitHub part, but aside from the GitHub stuff, is everyone able to still build the site locally? Feel free to just let me know in the chat. Awesome. And does anyone have any questions? Okay. All right, so earlier we saw the extra.scss file, which allowed us to add our custom CSS. We can also add JavaScript, and pkgdown is going to automatically recognize the file called extra.js if we put that inside of the folder called pkgdown. So in the same location where we put that SCSS file, we can also put an extra.js file, and pkgdown is going to handle that really nicely for us. And whenever we push to GitHub, it's going to all go into the correct place. So as long as we name the file extra.js, that's the perfect place to add any interactivity that we want to put. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an additional component to the nav bar. And so it's going to be a button. And then when the user clicks on the button in the nav bar, there's going to be a pop-up message that appears. So I'm going to create a component called JS Alert. I'm going to add that. Okay, I think I actually have a typo in the slides here because I didn't add the JS Alert into the right. So I will have to modify what's on the slides there. But then what's going to happen is when the user clicks on that button, oh, sorry, I keep clicking spacebar by accident. When the user clicks on that button, they're going to see a message that pops up saying JavaScript is working. All right, so from slide 57, I'm going to copy the bottom part here, and the part that says JS Alert. And I'm going to add that to my nav bar. Be really, really careful with the white space and the tabbing. If they aren't exactly where they're supposed to be, it's not going to work properly. So I'm going to hit tab until my JS Alert part lines up with my line 27 where I put the my LinkedIn. Those should be like the same depth, and then same idea with the icon and the href, those should all be at the same depth. And then if I want that button to actually show up in my nav bar, I'm also going to have to type it here. So the name of the component is JS Alert. I'll have to update those slides after to add that in there. And then I'm also going to have to create that extra.js file. So in the pkgdown folder, where I've got my extra.scss file, I'm going to create a file called extra.js. And then I'm going to paste in the content from the right-hand side of slide 57. Also, as a heads up for anyone who is getting concerned that we're only on slide 57 out of 100, we're not going to go through all of the slides that are in there. There's going to be there's more in the slides than what we'll be able to cover. So for some of the future topics, I'm going to have people kind of vote on which topic they're the most interested in seeing. So we're kind of getting close to the main content that we're going to cover today, and then there will be a vote on what extra fancy stuff you want to see. Okay, so now I've got my extra.js and I've added the JS Alert component to my navbar. I'm going to run build site again. And now I've got this additional component right here. And when I click on this button, it has a little pop-up that says JavaScript is working. You can also insert other HTML or JavaScript or insert kind of arbitrary things wherever you want. So there's, in this example here, I'm going to add additional JavaScript, but instead of putting it in my extra.js file, I'm just going to use the pkgdown.yml file. So under the template section, After the body of the HTML, I'm going to insert this HTML. This is just, it's going to add some confetti when we click on the page, basically. As a heads up, if you're feeling overwhelmed looking at the JavaScript, don't worry. I didn't write that JavaScript. I actually got ChatGPT to write that for me. So even if you're not like even if you're someone who doesn't know JavaScript, you can still like add a lot of fun interactivity to your site. And ChatGPT is actually pretty good at writing JavaScript. So that's something that's really nice. So I'm going to copy this in. So this part is going to go under the section that says template at the, in the underscore pkgdown.yml file. So I'm going to make sure that it lines up with like wherever I had theme dark, the includes should line up with theme dark. I'm going to save that, rebuild the site. And this JavaScript is basically just using a thing called canvas confetti. And then when the user clicks, it's going to start some confetti at the position of their mouse click. And now when I click, there's a little confetti wherever I click. So you can embed JavaScript either in the extra.js file, or you can just use the underscore pkgdown.yml file directly. Okay. For the next part, we're going to do some stuff that kind of requires a bit of a deeper understanding of how GitHub Actions and GitHub Pages actually work. So I want to do another kind of poll. Let me know in the chat, have you ever used GitHub Actions before today? And if you have used it, have you used kind of just like template files, or have you ever like actually tinkered around with sort of like the back end of GitHub Actions or GitHub workflows? Okay, yeah, so Ray is saying used GitHub Actions, yes, but understood, no. And I think that's a very, very common situation. I think like as our users, if you are someone who uses the use this package, one thing that's really great is that it does a lot of the hard work for you. So you don't have to struggle so much with GitHub Actions, which is great, but it can also kind of hold you back from being able to do the more advanced stuff because it doesn't really force you to get into the weeds of it. So today we are going to get slightly more into the weeds of it. All right, so in this very specific scenario, we're going to talk about how GitHub Pages actually works for the repo that we're working with. How it works is whenever we push to the main branch, we have a file in our project. This is going to be a little confusing. So in the main folder of our project, we have something called the underscore pkgdown.yml file. But then in the .github folder, there is a folder called workflows, and then a file called pkgdown.yaml. So very, very important. We've got two different files. So I'll put this in the chat. So the underscore pkgdown.yml controls how your pkgdown site looks. But then the pkgdown.yaml file with an A is the file that's going to control how GitHub Pages works, or more specifically, it's how your GitHub workflow works. Very, very important distinction. we've got those two files. We're going to be talking about them both over the next hour. So make sure they're somewhat-ish clear in your head, or at least clear that those are two different files. So the one that has the A in it, the pkgdown.yaml file, that's the code that defines what's known as the workflow. If you're someone who comes from a GitLab background, maybe you've heard that be called a pipeline, same sort of idea. And what that file does is it controls the terminal commands that are going to be run on the virtual machine when you push to GitHub. So those commands are going to be the things that kind of tell GitHub what to do. So it's going to tell it what stuff to install. So in our example, it's going to tell it to install R and Pandoc and our R packages and Cordo. Then it's going to tell GitHub to run the build site GitHub Pages function. And then finally, it's going to tell GitHub to place the resulting HTML files in the correct location so that they can be seen on GitHub Pages. So it's a lot easier if we take a look at what is actually contained in that file. So it's in the .github folder, then the workflows, and then pkgdown.yaml. So when we were using the use this package, this file got created automatically for us. Everything was just nice and it worked automatically, which is kind of great, right? But again, it's also a little bit hindering us from knowing exactly like what happens in here, because we didn't have to think about it in order to get it all working on GitHub. But what it looks like is this, and there's like different steps here. So there's a step here that is going to install Pandoc. There's one that's going to install R. There's one that's going to install the R dependencies. So that's like your R packages and whatever else you might need. There's a step that's going to run the build site GitHub Pages function, and so on. And these are ultimately all just terminal commands. But the catch here is that each one of those lines that you see here is actually a lot of terminal commands. It looks like it's only one line, but under the hood, what each one of those is doing is it's running something called a GitHub action, which can be much, much longer than a single terminal command. So, for example, if we take a look at the I can't remember if it's line 30 or line 34, one of these two. I think it's in setup our dependencies. It's just being written as one single line of code here, or one like terminal command, essentially. But under the hood, this actually has a lot of steps in it that we don't see in this file. One of the steps that action does is it installs Cordo. And the steps to install Cordo are actually a lot of terminal commands, and they're pretty complicated. So I've got a screenshot here on slide 66 of kind of what actually goes on when you install Cordo, if you use the GitHub action to install it. It's got 128 lines, and it's some pretty complicated terminal commands. But rather than having to put all 128 lines in there, we get to call it using just a single line. So what we're doing here is we're saying there's a user on GitHub called R-Lib, and they have some GitHub action that's defined, which is called setup R dependencies. And then rather than us having to type out all of those terminal commands that somebody else has already typed out, we can just say, I want to pull those terminal commands from this repository. Please run those for me. And in fact, the the setup R dependencies does a lot more than just install Cordo. So those 128 lines are kind of just one small part of that action. So GitHub Actions can get really complicated really quickly. It's nice that other people have done the hard work for us of figuring out how to properly install all of these things. But my point here is that it's complicated, but under the hood, it's actually just terminal commands. And you can probably do the vast majority of what you want to do with just a few commands. So somebody else has done all of the hard work of figuring out how to install R and install Cordo and get everything configured properly as sort of the default with pkgdown. So that's really nice. But then if we want to customize things even further, I want to kind of convince you that it's not as hard as it seems. It's like GitHub Actions like feel really scary. And they kind of look really scary. And to some degree, they are scary. But the types of stuff that you probably want to do, I can promise you, are not as scary as figuring out how to properly install Cordo across any operating system. And in fact, probably most of the things that you would ever want to do can be done with just a few terminal commands. The really important thing to know, if you remember kind of nothing else about like GitHub Actions and pkgdown today, remember this. When you're making a pkgdown site, GitHub Pages is going to host any page that ends up in the folder called docs. So that means that if you want like images to show up or other web pages or whatever else you want to create, you have to make sure that it eventually ends up in the docs folder. And there's a few terminal commands that can make that easier to do. There's the make dir command that'll help you make a new folder or new directory. You can change directories using the cd command. You can make copies of files so that like the common practice here would be like you can copy the files that you want to have in GitHub Pages into the docs folder so that they show up on GitHub Pages. The terminal command for running a line of R code is called rscript-e. And then if you're a Cordo user, you'll probably be familiar with the Cordo render command. And if you want a Cordo page to be accessible on GitHub Pages, then you could put the output directory as docs. So anything that ends up in our docs folder, that's going to be visible on GitHub Pages. I see that there's a question in the chat. So does the build site GitHub Pages function build off of the main branch by default? I believe it does, yes. And I think you might be able to change that. I don't know the exact details of that off the top of my head, but if you check the documentation, I think you can probably change that. Okay, so an example to kind of show how this works, if we wanted to actually modify the contents of the GitHub workflow file, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the link image that's used on my pkgdown site. So what I mean by that is right now, if I hover over any of the headings, there's a little blue link icon. And let's say I don't like that blue link icon and I want to customize that to my own image. Well, in order to do that, we are actually going to have to get our hands dirty with the GitHub workflow file. So if I right click and inspect that blue link image, I can see here that where it's actually pulling that image from is the docs folder, and then it says link.svg. So where it's getting that image from is in my project, in the docs folder. It is this picture right here. Oh, sorry, that's not going to pop up nicely in RStudio, but this link.svg image is where it's getting that image from. So if I want to change that image to something else, well, if I'm running this locally, I could just change that image file. That would work perfectly well if I'm running this locally. However, if I'm running that on GitHub, let's take a look at our repo for a second. So if we look at what we actually push to GitHub, there is no docs folder that gets pushed to GitHub. It's actually part of our gitignore. So anything that builds locally and ends up in the docs folder will not end up on GitHub Pages unless we modify what happens in our workflow file to move things into a different spot. So that's what we're going to have to do. So I'm going to right click on this image to save it to my computer. So I'm going to put that in, one sec. We'll put that in my project folder. Okay, so in my docs folder, actually, sorry, not in my docs folder. In the package down folder, we're going to create a folder here called assets. And then in the assets folder, I'm going to call this custom_link.svg. So now in the package down folder under assets, I should see a file called custom_link.svg. By the way, if anyone's wondering where I got this image, it's from the Font Awesome icon website. You can like create the icon and then change the color and then download the image. So that's where that's from. So now what we need to do is we know that we've got this file called customlink.svg. It's located in the assets folder. Now, something really nice about package down is that it's going to take any of the files that are located under assets, and it's going to put it into the docs folder during the workflow. But what we need to do is we need to tell GitHub that we want to replace the default link.svg image with our custom link.svg image. So here we're going to create an additional step in our GitHub workflow file. The name that I'm giving to this step is I'm going to override the default link.svg image with the custom link.svg image. And then the terminal command that I'm going to run is I'm going to copy the custom link.svg image, and I'm going to basically replace the link.svg with that. So what's going to happen in the back end is I'm going to still have two files there. One's going to be called link.svg and the other one's going to be called custom link.svg, but they are both going to be an image of that purpley kind of paperclip image. So I'm going to copy what I've got on slide 72. And then I'm going to put this in my workflow file. So this one is the one that's in the .github/workflows pkgdown.yaml with an A in it. And then after the site is built, that's where I'm going to paste that step. So the step immediately before that one is going to build the site, which is going to create that docs folder. It's going to have that blue paperclip image put into the docs folder. And immediately after that, we're going to override that file with our own file. So this is a time where we're not really going to be able to see the changes kind of applied locally. Because this is part of our workflow. So we actually have to push this onto GitHub in order to see this change applied. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to commit all of these files. That's going to take a few minutes for that change to apply. But if I want to see that change applied locally, what I can do to preview it is I can run the build site function again. And then in my local copy, I could change the image that's in the docs folder. So right now, my local copy, it has the custom link.svg image, but it also has the link.svg. So if I want this to look different, I could either like delete link.svg and rename this file to just link.svg. Now if I refresh it, now it's got that little purple paperclip locally. The other thing that you could do is you could right-click, inspect, and change the link that it's pulling this from. So see right now, again, it's pulling it from the docs folder and then link.svg. But in theory, you could change that to any link you wanted, any like image, either like online or in your folder. So I could modify this to, I already deleted the one that was called custom link.svg, but like I could change it here in theory if I hadn't already deleted that file. So that's how I can see that change locally. But to actually see it on GitHub, we have to wait for that workflow to finish running. So that'll take a couple minutes. Oh, I don't think I actually pushed that. All right, so now that I pushed that, let me just make sure the commit is there. Perfect, so that'll take a few minutes. While I'm waiting for that to load, I want to do a little vote. So there's a few topics left that we can cover. We definitely won't have time for all of them. So I'm interested to know, feel free to put your answer in the chat. Which of these topics are you the most interested in talking about? So type A if you want to talk about how to create a Cordo vignette and how to put that on your pkgdown site. Type B if you want to know how we can add a logo image into our navbar. So right now our site just has the title of our package, but in theory we could add a logo image right there if we wanted to. Other choices that we have are adding a dynamic test coverage badge. So that would be like we would have I can show what that one looks like. 1 second. So incognito browser. So we can add talk about how to add badges to your package, including one that has the test coverage using the Cove R package, or last option is adding a custom domain for your GitHub pages. Oh, I keep pressing spacebar. Okay, so all right, I see in the chat we've got. All right, I think probably the winning. Oh, okay, we've got some more answers now. We've got 3 votes for A, 3 votes for C, and 3 votes for D. Okay, maybe Lisa might be the tie-breaking vote. Okay, yeah, so we'll go with A. And then we'll do like another vote after if there's time for an additional topic after A. Okay, so we'll talk about Cordo vignettes. This topic is actually, I'm pretty sure it's like fairly quick to cover, so maybe we'll have time for 2 of those. All right, so to create a Cordo vignette, first of all, you're going to want to make sure you have Cordo installed on your computer, and you're also going to want to make sure that you have the Cordo package installed, which I think should be installed by default if you have the Cordo command line interface installed, or if you are using RStudio, it should be, I believe, installed by default. And then from there, we're going to use the use vignette function. We're going to type the name of the file that we want to create. So I'm going to call it tutorial.qmd. And then we'll give it a title as well. So I will run that in the console. And then there's going to be a few things we're going to want to do. So if I want to be able to render this file locally, right now it's not going to render. So if I just click this render button, it's going to give me a weird error. And it's just going to say something like, okay, yeah, actually that was nice. It did tell me the exact problem. So right now it's telling me this package that I've created is not actually installed. So if I want to get rid of that, if I go to the build tab in the top right panel of RStudio, I can do clean and install. It's gonna restart R. And now if I try to render again, hopefully that should work. We'll see. Okay, there we go. So now the file is rendering. Big recommendation that I have is if you are trying to create Cordo vignettes, I do recommend regularly just trying to render the file on its own without rendering the entire site. If you try to render the entire site and there's an issue in your Cordo file, it's not going to give you a helpful error message. It's just going to tell you that there's a system command error with Cordo, and you're going to be super confused and wondering why you're getting that error because you already have Cordo installed. So I highly recommend just render the file on its own if you're having any issues. It'll give you more useful error messages than running build site. Okay, so now I've got this. Other important thing to mention is that if you call any other packages in your Cordo vignette, you're going to need to include that in your GitHub workflow. So if I try to create a second chunk here, and let's say I want to create a chunk that's going to run some Python code. If I want to render this, I'm going to need to have Reticulate installed, which I might have installed locally. And it's going to work for me just fine locally. But if I try to push this to GitHub, I'm going to get a mysterious error. It's just going to say system command Porto not found, which is not a helpful error, because what actually is going on is it needs the reticulate package installed to be able to render any Python chunks. So under the .github/workflows/pkgdown.yaml file, there's going to be a section for your setup R dependencies. And there's a little part here that says extra packages. This is where you're going to add any other R packages that you need to have installed, whether that's for your Porto vignette or like for any other reason. If it's something that's not stated as a dependency in your package, then you'll need to add it to this file here. So if you've got like dependencies on other packages that you've specified in your like in your description file, it's going to be fine. GitHub is going to install those for you because it's properly listed as like if you have any dependencies in here, those should be there. But if you start creating Porto vignettes that call other packages that are not actually dependencies in your package, you're going to need to add that to your pkgdown.yaml file. So in this case, the one that I'm going to want to add is reticulate. But same idea, if I was going to try to, load some package here, if I wanted to load this package, and that's not a dependency of my package, I would then have to add that in here as well. Otherwise, you're just going to get a bunch of really annoying emails telling you that your GitHub workflows are failing. So I'm going to flip back to GitHub and just make sure that everything we did before successfully finished. So the workflow did finish running from before, and now if I do Control-Shift-R, hard refresh, I should be able to see all of those changes that we applied from earlier. So now we've got that paperclip icon that works. We've got all those other buttons. There's a couple questions in the chat. So can we specify packages on GitHub that are not on CRAN? Yes, you can. I don't know the syntax off the top of my head, but because it's just terminal commands, whatever the terminal command would be to like install that package, it should work. So it would be something like, again, I don't have the exact syntax off the top of my head, but you would run like rscript -e, I'm putting this in the chat. And then you would have to do like, install GitHub, and then like user/package name, something like that. You might have to play around with that, but general idea. Okay, and then there's also a question about rendering the tutorial.qmd. So you can render the tutorial.qmd file in a few different ways. If you're using RStudio, you can click on the render button. If you're using a different IDE, the render button might not exist. So you can render Porto documents using the terminal as well. So if I wanted to render that file, I could do Porto render, and then it's, where is it located? It's it's in the vignettes folder. So then I could do vignettes/tutorial.qmd. And then I could say I want my output directory to go into, so by default, it's assuming you want it to go into the R Medicine 2025 folder here. But if I want to put it into docs, I could say the output directory should be docs. I think that should work. I might have to play around with that, but let's see where that actually puts that file. No, okay. Oh, it says it's being used by another process, so it might be because oh, my space bar. So I probably will have to play around with that exact terminal command. There we go. It might just not go in the right spot. Okay. Oh yes, okay. So if you get the error that's when you try to render the tutorial.qmd file, if it says there's a no package called R-Medicine, it's because you have to go to the build tab and then do the clean and install first. So right now you haven't actually installed the R-Medicine package on your machine. So you can fix it either by like commenting out the line of code in the tutorial.qmd file that attempts to load that package. But more likely, you're probably going to want to do clean and install. That way it'll be able to render that fully. Oh, okay. Let's see if my studio will come back to life here. There we go. Okay. All right, so now that I have created the tutorial.qmd file, I've rendered it, I've made sure that it can properly render. Now I can run that build site function again if I want to see like what it's actually going to look like on my pkgdown website. Okay, so now there's a section here called articles, and this is where that's going to be. So now it has like the same styling as the rest of my pkgdown site. Just as a heads up, not everything that you can do in a regular Cordo document is something that you can do in a Cordo vignette. You should be able to do most things, but not everything works perfectly. So that's why I really, really recommend, yeah, try rendering things first. And yeah, just don't expect it to look exactly the same as a regular Cordo document. For example, if you try to add like a call out, it'll still show up, but it's not going to show up the same way that it would in a Cordo document. Okay, so now I'm going to push all of these files onto GitHub. And then I'm going to take like a 3-minute water break while that is pushing to GitHub. So feel free if you want to go take a quick break. We'll start back up in like 3 minutes while this is going on to GitHub. Okay. So one last thing that I wanted to show with the Cordo vignettes is that you can also change how they're displayed on your site. So by default, they're gonna go under a section called articles, and they're, just gonna kind of go in order. But if you don't want that to say articles, you can change what that text says, and you can change like the, oh my gosh, my space bar. You can change the order of the articles as well. So back to where I was. Okay. So let's say instead of it saying articles, I want it to say, oh, that's actually not the right spot. Where's that? Yeah, okay. So instead of it saying articles, I could change it so that it says vignettes, for example. I could put like a font awesome icon beside the word vignettes. And then I could kind of create the appearance of having like a subcategories if I wanted to. So I could create like a subheading called examples. And then under that, it would say tutorial title. It's easier if I just show what that actually looks like. So on my finished one here, so instead of it saying reference and then vignettes, I've changed it so that it says vignettes and then function documentation. I added the little icons. I created this kind of false illusion of having like a subheadings and whatnot. You can see under here, same idea, created like a little fake grouping here. So for the sake of time, I won't go through, all of the details of that, but you can copy paste it from the slides if you're interested. Just as a heads up, these spaces here are not regular spaces. The blank characters are actually like an alt code. So it's alt 0160 to get those spaces. So I will copy paste that into my project. And that's going to be in my underscore pkgdown.yml file, and that's my nav bar section. Sweet. Don't want to get rid of the other parts that I had, so I'm just gonna paste that on top of there. That should work. And then we can check on GitHub, just make sure that our vignette actually showed up. There we go. So now the vignette is there. And we don't have a ton of time left, so we can take another vote on the last topic that we'll cover. So I'll pull that slide back up that has the different topics. I don't think we'll be able, with the time that we have left, to cover the one about the dynamic test coverage badge, unfortunately. That one's a bit more involved, but so out of the options here, either the logo image in the nav bar or custom domain for your GitHub pages, put your vote into the chat and we will talk about one of those two topics in the few minutes that we have left. Okay, pretty overwhelming majority there. So everyone has voted for D, custom domain for your GitHub pages. So, okay. So by default, your website that you create is going to end in .github.io. And if you want to put a custom domain, you can purchase the domain from any provider that you want. You're going to be like probably asked if you want just the domain or if you also want hosting services. You don't need the hosting services. You would just pick the domain. GitHub Pages is still going to be providing the hosting services. So it's really just a domain. For this workshop, I purchased the domain called ggnaut2.site. For a year, this only cost me about $2 Canadian. So depending on the domain that you pick, it'll be either like super cheap or they can get pretty expensive. If you try to do like a .com one, it'll cost more. But if you're okay with it having like a different ending to it, then they can be pretty cheap. I got mine from domain.com. I'm not like endorsing them or anything. You can pick any provider that you want. And then once you've purchased the domain, it's a little complicated. I'm gonna like maybe preface this by saying I don't know anything about this stuff. So I'm definitely not an expert on this. I figured out how to get it working, but for sure this is not my area of expertise. So if I say words that don't make full sense, I'm sorry. But also other kind of takeaway point is that you don't have to be an expert on this stuff to get it working. It's not as hard as it looks, or as it sounds maybe. Okay, so once you've purchased your custom domain, there's going to be some sort of like dashboard that your domain provider has, where you're going to be able to change the DNS settings. The exact interface might look a little different depending on which domain provider you have, but basically you would like log into the account where you purchased the domain and then just kind of search around on the website for wherever the DNS settings are. Under the DNS settings, again, I don't know what these words actually really mean, but there's going to be like there's going to be a section where you can add something called A records. And if there's any default A records that are listed there, you're going to want to remove those default ones. And then you're going to want to add the following 4 IP addresses as A records. If there's like an option that says, oh, do you want to use @ or www? Again, I don't know what those mean, but you're going to select the one that says @ and then you're going to put in these 4 IP addresses. And these are coming from the GitHub documentation. So there's a link to that there. Oh, before everyone starts heading out, maybe I'll just put this in the chat. I do have a feedback form. I'm probably going to be teaching this, like parts of this workshop in other contexts. So I have a little feedback form. If you don't mind filling it out, that would be super, super helpful to let me know how today went and if there's anything that I can kind of change for future iterations of this workshop. Thanks everyone for attending, and yeah, I'll finish this topic, but if you have to head out, then yeah, thanks for coming. All right, so you're gonna add those 4 IP addresses as A records, and then you're going to add another record. This time it's a CNAME record. Again, it's probably going to ask you, do you want to choose www or @? This time you're going to choose www. And then it's going to ask you like where you want to point it to. And then that's where you would put your, like the URL to your GitHub pages. I can show what this actually looks like on my domain.com kind of dashboard thing in a second. But then once you've set all that stuff up, you have some settings you have to change on GitHub as well. Just give me 1 second and I can pull open my domain.com thing just to show you what it looks like for mine. pulling it up on my other screen here. One sec. So online. Almost have it. Okay. All right, so I like logged into my domain.com account. I went to the sort of dashboard for the domain that I purchased. And then if I scroll down to the very bottom of this page, there's a section here that says advanced tools. And then if I click on that, there's just like a button that says manage. Okay. Oh, I wanted to click on, sorry, the DNS. So it's the one that says advanced DNS records. It's going to give me this little pop-up telling me that only advanced users should do this. I'm not an advanced user, so maybe this isn't the, maybe that warning is there for people like me. But in terms of what this actually looks like, it's not maybe as complicated as it seems. So there's just like a section here that says A records. I clicked on add record. It asked me for the type, either the @ or the www. I had to put the IP addresses, and then there was a section for CNAME. And I, figured this all out just from reading like the GitHub Pages documentation. So definitely not an expert. I got it bare minimum working, but I don't know if this is all like 100% perfect. Yeah, so you can play around with that. But then once you have it set up on the back end, you have to also set it up on the GitHub side of things as well. So on the settings page for your repo, there's a page that says GitHub Pages, and then there's a section here that says custom domain. So in here, you're going to want to type the custom domain that you purchased. In my case, it was ggnaut2.site. Don't put www in front of it. Don't put HTTPS in front of it. Just put the actual name of the domain that you purchased. I'm not going to click save because that'll make my site like inaccessible to everybody while it's like updating. But if I were to click save, what would happen is it would take somewhere between like 15 minutes and maybe 48 hours, I think, on the upper end for that change to actually apply. You might see like errors in the meantime while it's waiting. So, be patient, check on it after like half an hour or something. And then you'll also want to make sure that the enforce HTTPS thing is checked off. It should be by default, but yeah, don't change that, I guess. And I think that's it for that part. And also, if you search on YouTube, there's lots of videos as well for how to set up a custom domain for your GitHub pages. It should be applicable in general, regardless of like what type of site you're creating, whether it's like a Cordo site or pkgdown, same general steps. So it's not too bad. And I think we'll probably stop there in terms of topics. I don't think we can fit any of the last ones in there. Let me just. Okay. Well, yeah, because the last topic was the test coverage badges and the sidebar, which are both kind of take a long time to cover. But if you are interested in learning about those topics, they are in the slides, and hopefully everything that you should need should be there. But if not, you can also refer to the original GitHub repo that I have. I'll put the link for that in the chat. But you can kind of just peek around at what's in the code in this repo. And feel free to kind of, steal stuff from there. And yeah, thank you so much everyone for attending. I'll stick around if anybody has any questions. Yeah, and please fill out that feedback form if you have a minute. It would be super helpful.